He was not a billionaire, not a celebrity, but without him, you couldn't say, "I miss you" from across the world, using the phone in your hand. His name was Martin Cooper. In 1973, he stood in the middle of a New York street, holding a device as big as a brick, and made the world's first mobile phone call. But here's something most people don't know. That first call wasn't to his parents, not to his wife. It was to his biggest rival, and he said just one sentence: "I'm calling you," from a real mobile phone. Back then, people laughed at his idea. Today, over 5 billion people carry that crazy dream in their pockets. But behind this world-changing invention, there were sacrifices, rejections, and one warning from Martin that still matters today. Technology should set us free, not control us. But now, are we really free? Martin Cooper was born in 1928 in Chicago. His family came from Ukraine. They were Jewish immigrants. Life was not easy, but in their home, there was one special thing: a small old radio. One day, that radio played music. Martin, just a little boy at the time, looked at it and asked, "How can a voice come from the air?" His father only smiled. But for Martin, that question stayed in his heart. It was not just curiosity, it became a dream. Martin loved to take apart radios and other electronics. He wanted to understand how things worked, how a machine could carry someone's voice. To him, it was magic, real magic that came from science. Later, Martin studied engineering at the Illinois Institute of Technology, one of the best technical schools in Chicago. He graduated in 1950 with a degree in electrical engineering. After that, he joined Motorola, a company known for making two-way radios for the police and the military. Martin worked hard, but he was not happy with the way the world communicated. At that time, people still used phones with wires. Phones were big. They were stuck to desks and walls. People could move, but their voices could not. Martin thought, if humans can walk freely, why must their voices stay in one place? Meanwhile, a big company called Bell Labs was working on a new project, the car phone. Bell Labs was part of AT&T. They were famous for creating major inventions like the transistor, the laser, and even early computer languages. Now, Bell Labs wanted to put a phone inside a luxury car's dashboard. It was still big. It still needed a strong network, and it was still tied to one place. When Martin read the news, he shook his head. "They're still putting wires in cars? That's the wrong direction," he said. "The future must be something you can carry in your hand." One day, in a Motorola meeting, Martin stood up. He shared his crazy idea, a new kind of phone, a phone that didn't stay in one place, a phone that didn't need a car or a house or a desk. At that time, it had no name, but today we call it the mobile phone. The room went quiet. Then someone laughed. "Martin, who wants to carry a brick next to their ear?" Martin just smiled. "Maybe it looks big today, but 5 years from now, people will carry it in their pocket." The Motorola executives were not sure, but one of them finally said, "Okay, build a prototype, but don't waste too much time or money. This gamble is your responsibility." Martin accepted. He knew this was not just about building a machine. It was about changing how people talk and how they live. Everyone said he was crazy, but Martin believed the world will never change unless someone brave enough dares to try. Martin Cooper didn't have much. Not a big budget, not a large team. He only had one thing, a big idea, and very little time. But for Martin, that was enough. He knew this wasn't about how many people were on the team. This was about who had the courage to move first into the future. Motorola gave him a small chance, and Martin used it with all his heart. He gathered a small group of engineers. Together, they began to build something no one had ever seen before, a real mobile phone. But not everyone believed in him. Even inside Motorola, some people laughed at the idea. Why are we wasting money on a product nobody needs? Home phones work just fine. A phone you carry? Come on. Martin heard all of that, but he didn't argue. He just kept working day after day, night after night. The first prototype was far from perfect. It was almost 25 centimeters long. It weighed almost 1 kilogram. It needed 10 hours of charging. for just 30 minutes of talk time. And the shape? It looked like a brick with an antenna. The phone often broke. Sometimes it lost signal. But Martin didn't give up. He didn't care about making it perfect. He only wanted to prove one thing, that it worked. Meanwhile, Bell Labs kept moving fast. Bell Labs was a giant. They were part of AT&T and had invented many great things. The transistor, the laser, even early computer code. Now, they were building car phones, installed inside luxury vehicles. The media loved it. Bell Labs. The future of communication is in the car. Martin knew, if he didn't act fast, the world would remember someone else's name, not his. But there was another problem. There was no cellular network yet. No signal. No towers. So what did Martin's team do? They built one. They installed a small signal tower on top of Motorola's building in Manhattan. That mini system only worked with one phone, the prototype they built. From there, the signal connected to a landline, so it could call anyone. And then came the big day. April 3rd, 1973, Manhattan, New York. Martin Cooper stepped out of the Motorola office. In his hand, the world's first mobile phone. Reporters followed him. People on the street stared. The phone looked strange, big, heavy, but Martin knew. This was the first step to the future. He stopped on the sidewalk. He pressed the buttons. The call connected. 1 ring, 2 rings. Someone answered. It was Joel Engel, the head of Bell Labs, his biggest rival. Martin smiled, then said, "Joel, I'm calling you from a real cellular phone." Silence. No reply for a moment. Then Joel spoke. Surprised, confused, but real. That call wasn't just a conversation. It was a moment that changed history. The next day, the news exploded. Motorola launches the world's first mobile phone. A new era in communication begins. Motorola beats Bell Labs in a historic first. A reporter asked, "What do you call this device?" Martin answered calmly, "We call a handheld cellular phone." But in his heart, he knew the world had already changed. And still, Martin understood one thing. Making history is just half the battle. The other half is proving the world actually needs what you built. Extended and emotional version. Martin Cooper once stood on the streets of Manhattan, holding a device that had never existed before. He called his biggest rival at Bell Labs and said, "Joel, I'm calling you from a real mobile phone." That was history. That was the moment the world was supposed to change. At least, that's what Martin believed. For a few days, the Motorola office was still busy. Journalists came. Demos were repeated again and again. Martin told the story of his first call like a broken record, but people loved it. For a while. Then time passed, and reality arrived. That first mobile phone, Dynatac, was not ready for the real world. It needed 10 hours of charging. It only lasted for 30 minutes of talking. It weighed almost 1 kilogram. It was long, big, and heavy like a brick with an antenna. And the price? Over $4,000. Far too expensive. People didn't say, "Wow." They said, "Who wants to carry a brick? A rich man's toy. It's just for showing off." And there was a bigger problem. No signal. The phone only worked because Martin and his team had built a special tower on Motorola's building. Outside of that, it was just a dead object. Phone companies didn't want to build networks. They said, "No one is asking for this. Why should we invest?" And the public agreed. People were happy with landline phones at home. Why carry something heavy just to make a call? Martin started getting fewer meeting invitations. Some presentations were canceled. Colleagues who once cheered him now avoided eye contact. One day, he walked past the hallway and heard someone whisper, "Poor guy." Maybe his dream was too far ahead. One late night, the office was quiet. Most lights were off. Martin sat alone at his desk. The prototype sat there. Its lights were off. The antenna was bent. No one touched it anymore. He looked at it and said softly, "Was I too early? Or just too stubborn?" At home, his wife saw him walk in, tired and quiet. While making tea, she asked gently, "Is it all worth it, Martin?" He paused, then answered, "If we don't start now, who will?" Weeks passed. The Dynatac phone was placed in storage. The lab that once had cables and sketches was now empty. The whiteboard was covered in dust. Motorola moved on to safer projects. Investors wanted quick results, not dreams. And Martin? He still came to work, still took notes, still opened new ideas, even if no one wanted to read them. In an interview years later, Martin said, "Every great invention sounds useless at first, but one day people will ask, how did we ever live without it?" He knew that day had not arrived yet, but he also believed one day it would, because he didn't build the mobile phone for his own time. He built it for the future. Martin had opened the door to a new world. But for now, the world chose to stand at the doorway, afraid to take the first step. Years had passed since that voice traveled through the air, Martin Cooper's voice in the world's first mobile phone call. But after that day, there was no big celebration, no instant revolution, only silence. The world wasn't ready. And like many inventors who arrived too early, Martin had to walk alone again. In his quiet office, he kept drawing, kept writing, kept believing. He knew technology can move fast, but people move slowly. Then, in the early 1980s, things began to change. Not with noise, not with a grand speech, but with one quiet decision in a meeting room. Let's build the network. The first cell towers went up. Governments approved new frequencies. Telecom companies saw opportunity. And for the first time, the world began to follow the shadow it once ignored. In 1983, Motorola released its first commercial mobile phone, the Dynatac 8000X. It was big, heavy, and expensive. But this time, the world wanted it. Some bought it to be first. Some bought it to show status. Some bought it just to hold the future in their hands. And Martin? He wasn't on the stage. His name wasn't in the ads. No one said thank you. But in his living room, he watched the launch on TV alone. He smiled and said, "It's not just the device. It's the idea." Time moved faster. Phones got smaller. Prices went down. Mobile phones became not just for the rich, but for everyone. The world, which once rejected the idea, now couldn't live without it. One day a letter arrived, an invitation to speak, then another, and another. People started remembering, respecting, praising. And when the world finally called him the father of the mobile phone, Martin smiled and said, "I didn't create this to be famous. I created it so people could be free." Days kept passing, and in every pocket, in every phone call that bridges distance, in every message that saves lives, there's a part of Martin Cooper, the man who was once laughed at, then forgotten, but never gave up. It took 10 years. It took thousands of towers. It took the courage of many people. But finally, the world caught up to one man who dared to listen to the voice of the future. Martin Cooper didn't plant for today. He planted for the future. And finally, that future arrived. Today, a mobile phone can unlock your door, turn on the lights, order food, even check your heartbeat. But when Martin looked at all of that, he only smiled and said, "The most important thing stays the same, that you can talk to anyone, anywhere." He was no longer the young man holding a brick-sized device. He was now older, his hair white, his steps slower. But in his eyes, the same fire burned, a belief that technology should free people, not control them. In his 80s, Martin didn't chase the spotlight. He chose to teach, to share stories, and sometimes attend conferences, not to be famous, but to inspire the next generation. One day, a young person asked, "What's your biggest dream, Mr. Cooper?" Martin smiled and said, "Not to build great devices, but to make the world a little closer." Today, over 5 billion people around the world carry Martin's legacy in their pockets. Phones are no longer miracles. They are a part of life. They are bridges. And on one quiet afternoon, in a small park in California, Martin sat alone. No microphone, no cameras, just him and the world he once dreamed of. A child nearby laughed while recording his mother with a phone. Martin watched. He smiled, his eyes filled with tears. This is how technology should work, he thought, quietly changing the world without asking for attention. Time kept moving. Martin appeared less in the news. But his idea, it never stopped growing. He didn't invent the phone for fame. He invented it for us, so we could say I miss you, I'm safe, or simply, I'm here. Wires should not limit love. Distance should not decide our fate. Martin's face may not be everywhere, but his name lives quietly in every long-distance call, in every birthday video message, in every I love you sent across the ocean.